Hey there. Today I'm going to talk about a new X-Men roster that I've been messing around with and had also had quite a bit of fun with. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. So, X-Men for the most part are new to me. I have played with pieces in other affiliations, but prior to Xavier, I'd only really played the X-Men affiliation once. However, the puzzle and potential of this new leadership really just kind of called to me and intrigued me. So the first thing I ended up coming up with is this Power Ping Pong X-Men team. First, on the scale of narrative to competitive, this probably comes in somewhere between casual and synergistic. There are some character swaps that could definitely be made to make this list more casual, but also some swaps that you could make to make the synergies sign a little bit more and just to have some more powerful characters in general. But I'm pretty happy with the balance of where it is right now. Before I get into the roster itself, I want to give you an idea of the goal of the roster. Professor's leadership allows an allied character to gain one power when another allied character spends power on a superpower once per turn. So basically, it's a power share ability that doesn't have a range restriction, but it's restricted by who can use a superpower and when. So, with that said, let's get into the characters. Of course, we have the good Professor X leading the charge from behind because, well, that's where you want him. He is not a frontliner, he's super weak against throws, or really just anybody that has two power to pay for the mystic defense thing. So, letting him hang in the back and fire off some mind bullets, and also handing out rerolls is really what you want him for. Next up, we have the very capable Cable, who is very good in this list. He provides a few important things to the team. First, a superpower that you will almost always use on his turn with Body Slide. He also then has reactive power to buff your team's defenses, so it's very easy to trigger the power bounce off of Cable. But maybe most importantly, he can start the power chain round one. If you have priority and there is a midline extract, Cable is able to double move and grab the objective for free thanks to first class, and then body slide back to safety, which then gives one of your other characters one power. So he is just like a great use right off the rip and a sustained presence then throughout the rest of the game with his damage output and defensive buffs. Uh, and what I mean by the power chain or maybe the power train is once basically all of the X-Men characters really need two power to use their superpowers round one, effectively at least. And so as soon as that first power gets placed on one of the other characters, a chain reaction can kind of then begin where everybody is going to end up getting that one extra power. You just need somebody to kick it off, and Cable's really good at that. Moving into the four threats that I currently have Nightcrawler, Psylocke, and Colossus. Nightcrawler and Psylocke both get some midline attacks off round one with the power train, and then throughout the game, they just have outlets to spend power both during their activation and when they are being attacked to get power to where you want it. These two also both have stealth, kind of, and just really good damage output and mobility. Colossus is just a really nice frontline man who takes hits and lives to tell about it. Between a throw you'll want to use during his turn and him protecting squishier pieces, he's just a great include on some of the more clumped up scenarios where his too dangerous to ignore ability will help out a lot. For the affiliated threes, I have Magic and Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat. Magic is just my favorite X-Men in general, and I don't get a lot of reasons to put her on the table, so this has been my excuse, and it's been a lot of fun. She is still a bit of a snowflake when it comes to taking damage, but her damage output is great, especially considering some of the support that she can get. Kitty can also hit surprisingly hard when most of her attacks only let the enemies count successes on two sides of the dice, but it is more so here for the objective play and her movement. Both of these girls, though, can get to the midline with an action left over thanks to the power chain on round one, giving them some nice offensive output early. We then have two out of affiliation threes with Sam Cap and Shuri. Sam Cap isn't one that I have got to put on the table too often at this point with this list, but the idea is he continues the power train round one because after he gets a power, he can move a buddy range two off of the starting line while he still does everything else he would normally want to anyways. All in all, he's just a great three threat with some control on his attacks and action economy that also helps the round one offensive of this X team. Shuri, though, Shuri's one of the best ping pong players on the list. Shuri, whose whole shtick is pushing enemy models around from afar and getting power to spend on rerolls for the team, still holds up really well. It's just a very nice build on her character. So she, like Charles, isn't doing much on round one other than maybe moving up and taking a pot shot. Uh, there's basically not a lot they're doing. But from then on, her and Charles have a really nice synergy where you kind of just get a free reroll every single activation on defense or offense. So if Magic needs a reroll on an attack or defense, Charles spends a power, gives it to Shuri, while giving Magic a reroll. Then, if need be, Shuri can actually then immediately spend that power to give Magic another reroll or save the power for another time. Later in the game, Shuri and Professor X both can sometimes just have an extra power, so they can use their rerolls just to give power to another character who needs it, almost like a reactive advanced R&D. I was over blocking an attack in the game that I played yesterday, so I actually rerolled one of my successes just to be able to give a power to a character before they activated. The final character, though, is the two threat Wong. If you don't have Cable on your list to get the power train rolling, Wong is the next best guy who can get the power train rolling and then some. Wong is able to spend an action to gain a power, but because he's not spending a power yet, he doesn't get to hand out a power. But then with two power, he's able to give a power to somebody within range three with Faithful Assistant, and then thanks to Xavier, hand out a power to either that same person or just any other allied character. This can open up some crazy round one shenanigans, but that's not really what he's here for this list. He's just kind of here to kick off the power train across the board. And then as the game goes on, if he doesn't need to move, he just needs two power to heal two damage off of somebody and give out two power. And if he does need a move action, well, he can still do all of that and move if he has three power at the start of his activation. So Wong's just a really nice support piece that's good for kicking around. He's good to heal up Xavier if he's been taking some pot shots, or just healing up the super tanky Colossus. Typically, though, if Cable is already on the table, Wong doesn't need to tag along because the main function of kicking off that train isn't as needed. But if Cable isn't there and you want that turn one power train, Wong is a great help. Talking team tactic cards, Brace and Indomitable are my restricted cards because Xavier really doesn't like throws. And any way we can go about stopping them is going to be worthwhile in this. The affiliated cards I'm bringing are Children of the Atom, just in case we see a list with a lot of status conditions that they hand out. First Class, because it lets us do all of our power train stuff round one while still also scoring points. This is not quite an auto include in the list. Like if I'm playing an extract with three objectives like Montesi and we don't have priority, First Class is really only saving us one power, so it's not really worth that slot. But it's nearly an auto include kind of a thing. And then the stupidly good Xavier's Dream. It's kind of like a reactive patch up. It's an auto include and probably in the top three best affiliation cards out there, in my opinion. For the character specific cards, we have Charles's Mind Wipe, which is just a nice card to fill in a slot against a more damage focused team where characters are likely going to daze multiple characters. Being able to shut them down after the first one is really strong. Journey through Limbo, which is fun. It's not like fantastic, but it gives Magic something else to spend her power on. And Mass Transit, which I have admittedly not actually tried yet, but it can be done turn one with Wong, so it might be worth the surprise cheese on a E-Secure at some point. Rounding out the team tactic cards, I have Mission Objective and Fallback. These are both just good generic cards that can fill in a spot if none of the other cards feel worthwhile. Moving on to the secures, I have Sword Base, Superpowered Scoundrels, and Infinity Formula. The play is to separate the battlefield into two parts to some degree and have Charles and Shuri on opposite sides providing support, aka playing ping pong, while the mobile damage dealers like Nightcrawler, Magic, and Psylocke move around the board capturing the points. This works out really well on Sword and Scoundrels, where everything is also close enough together to get some overlap on the rerolls between Shuri and Professor X, but also really lets the mobile characters basically just show off as they contest and attack points extremely efficiently. Infinity Formula is a bit of an interesting one. It's typically the idea here is to secure one side of the board with most of your threat, while having a single mobile character goes to the other side to maybe pick up an extract and hold the secure point for a round, maybe two, before just booking it to your more secure side and just trying to dominate the board presence there, while hopefully your opponent has a harder time shifting the fight over to where more extracts end up. For extracts, though, I have hammers, senators, and Montesi formula. Hammers is just fun. It may honestly not be optimal for this list, but it's fun. Senators puts a lot of points on the board, but thanks to the not move action movements that this team has just a ton of access to, it's one where the extra mobility can make quite a difference between my team versus what the other team brings. As well, with several characters having stealth, securing your extracts is a pretty safe bet for your characters that opening round without having to take shots. As well, it means first class is giving the X-Men a nice power advantage going into round two. Montesi formula has two kind of synergies. The first is that Nightcrawler, Cable, Magic, and Shadowcat all have a place effect so that you can line up pretty optimal beams without having to burn an action to get there. The cuter and potentially more deadly synergy is Nightcrawler and his Spender. To explain, Puff of Smoke lets Nightcrawler place himself within range 2 of a target after damage is dealt. Nightcrawler's Brimstone Blitz gets to add dice equal to the number of times he has been placed this turn. So typically, Kurt bamfs, attacks, and gets a 7 dice spender off for 1 power as his second action. But with a beam, Kurt might get a 9 dice spender since the beam is going to let him bamf to each of the targets that he attacks. So, all in all, this has some really neat power play in the roster, almost like its own little mini game if you get to really chain things together. It doesn't have much in the way of control outside of Shuri and Xavier. While it does have some nice damage dealers, they aren't the kinds of characters that can easily dispatch with some of the tanks in the game, though. Thankfully, though, Shuri and Xavier help by making the team more consistent, so the team hits well above their weight class as a whole. If you're wanting to tune up the list, you could replace Nightcrawler and Magic for Wolverine and X-23, which are both extremely efficient damage dealers like Magic and Nightcrawler, but also have the extra durability of Healing Factor, and you can bring in the Exceptional Healing Team Tactic card to make your front line look much more resilient. And as a fun bonus, because you're taking out both Journey for Limbo and Mass Transit, you also get to bring Fastball Special for Colossus Wolverine to help bait out your opponent's brace for impact. And you can even go so far as to bring Hulk for Nightcrawler to teleport up the board so that Hulk starts his activation in the middle of the table thanks to Wong and Mass Transit if you wanted to keep Nightcrawler in. If you're wanting to go for a more casual feel, Sam can become Iceman, and really any number of pieces are pretty easily interchangeable. If you want another throw, you can sub out a 4 for Bishop, add in Beast or Domino over Magic. You could even swap Cable out for Jean Grey and bring Cerebro for some long-range, hard-hitting Mystic attacks. And if you aren't really sure what to add your own flavor yet, I would recommend just giving the list a try and tweak it as you see fit. But this is my take on Professor X's new leadership. If you want the chance to get yourself one of these new X-Men boxes or any standard MCU expansion box, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a comment on a video in the month it was released. Doing so will enter you into Tritex's monthly giveaway. Speaking of Tritex, I want to give them a shout out along with Game Chefs as the guild sponsors. If you're in the UK and shopping online anyways, you shop at Tritex and you can use the code TritexGGCP5 at checkout for an extra 5% off. And if you use that on a pre-order item like, well, Professor X, that'll save you 25% off in total. If you were in the US, you can head to gamechefs.org and use the code GamersGuild, no spaces, to save an extra 15% off of their already discounted prices, which is also quite nice. However, I will continue to say if you're shopping from your own LGS, keep supporting them, have a good place to play. It's good to be able to build up a community for that. So thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.